All right, I think we have a quorum, so we can get started. This work session is on the staff response to the Food and Nutrition Report. And with us today are Susan Quinn, Chief Financial Officer, the Department of Financial Services. Ms. Quinn, would you like to introduce the rest of the team?
Yes, I would. I have next to me, I think you all know Penny McConnell, who is the Director of Food and Nutrition Program. And then we have Amy Hubel, who is one of the coordinators, as well as Wes Spear with us today. And I know there are a lot more food service staff in the back as well that has joined us.
Oh, excellent.
And our community stakeholders, I see them. Mm-hmm. They're all with us today as well.
Could I ask people who work for Food and Nutrition Services to stand up and let us recognize you? Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for being here today. Yes, excellent. We welcome you, and we also welcome the Real Food for Kids folks who are here. Would you stand up for a minute? Just so we appreciate you being here and for your advocacy. Thank you so much.
Okay. I know there's a lot of information provided in the report, but don't worry, I am not going to go through it page by page. I am going to try to focus just on the implementation summary pages. But before I do that, I did want to take just a couple minutes kind of introducing the organization of the document, because there was a lot of work that went into providing, I think, a little bit more information in addition to the responses to the recommendation. And what we've done is we provided a vision, mission, and value statements for our Food and Nutrition Services program. And following that, we categorize our work into 5 strategic pillars, okay? And those 5 pillars are nutrition integrity, and I'm on page 3. Education and community outreach, financial management, professional development, and wellness. So as you hear some of the responses that we prepared, a lot of those are categorized into those 5 categories. And then following the strategic pillars, you'll see that we provided detailed information on each of the recommendation and the action plan. So following the detail is where the summary of the responses start. And that starts on page 20, and that's where I'm going to start so we could kind of flip through the report. Hopefully you had the opportunity to review the report over the weekend. We realized that we did post it a little bit later than we had originally planned. But so if we flip to page 20, this is what we consider to be our action plan, and as I mentioned, we categorized it into those 5 strategic pillars. So the first item is the additives and preservatives. The recommendation was for the board to develop a policy or adopt a policy eliminating additives and preservatives, and our recommendation, our response is that we will include a section in our current regulation that deals with student health and wellness, and that section will have our nutrition standards, and it'll include the expectations to eliminate the additives and preservatives. So we are going to be adding a new section into that particular regulation regarding nutrition standards. And I don't want to keep flipping you back and forth on the document, but on page 9 of that document, or page 6 of that document, it does have some of the items, the artificial ingredients and preservatives that we've been working to eliminate. And then the next item, I'm on page 20. I'm sorry. I don't mean to keep flipping you back and forth. I think I'm going to have our staff kind of stay on the summary recommendation pages, and I'm hoping that you all have the report pulled up so that when I flip to the detail pages, maybe you can refer to those pages while we stay on the summary page. I don't know how difficult this will be flipping back and forth.
And Ms. Quinn, I will say that one of the things that we had sent out to the board members was that we were going to focus on the action plan
Yes.
on those
Okay.
4 pages, and then have the discussion around specific items first. So, thank you.
Okay.
I do think it's noteworthy. I'd like to compliment the team, and I think Real Food for Kids and their advocacy too has really helped us move the conversation forward. But this is easier. This is very complex work. But I think it's important to note that in school year 10-11, we noted 263 incidences of these artificial preservatives in our food. In April of 2013, it was 24. So that's a big improvement in a few years. I know we need to continue to work on it, but I do want to compliment the team for working hard to address something that is important.
Thank you. And we'll continue that work, obviously, and hope to have that number reduced 95% by 2016-17 school year. Regarding the local purchase of produce, we are also going to be adding language into that same regulation that would support opportunities to integrate some of our seasonal, locally grown, and school garden produce into our school meals. So we will be updating that regulation as well. We'll also be adding a preference statement regarding the locally grown produce to all future bids. And then we are working toward increasing purchases of those local produce in the next 3 years. Okay, and the next item under nutrition integrity was the menu cycle, and this is really increasing and expanding the menu cycle to increase some of the offerings, and we are going to be evaluating some options in this coming school year about what we could do to expand that menu cycle. All right, next item, which we'll spend a little bit more time on, is fresh fruits and vegetables. This recommendation was to introduce fresh fruits and vegetable bars at some of our select schools. And we are currently piloting this fresh fruit and vegetable bars at Marshall, Edison, Lake Braddock Secondary, and South County Middle Schools this year. We're hoping to expand that pilot to 10 additional schools next school year, and then hopefully all high schools in school year 2015-16, and all middle schools by school year 2016 and 17. Okay? Yes. Penny reminds me, the selections or the lunch options you were offered today is how the fresh fruit and vegetable bars
And
will
they
be
were
set up.
delicious.
Thank you. That's okay. And then 10 additional schools that we'll be piloting. I know there were some questions about, which schools are those. Those are going to be mainly our central kitchens with some additional high schools added. And those schools are listed on page 10 of the report. And we're also evaluating some opportunities to promote fruits and vegetables and some continuum of options for our elementary schools. We're in the process of establishing a principal advisory group to kind of assist us in this effort. But I also wanted to share some of the key activities that we do to promote fresh fruits and vegetables. And in this particular item, I am going to have you flip to the detail page because I think there's a lot of information on our detail pages, and those start on, I believe, page 8. Page 8. Okay, so some of the ways that we promote fruits and vegetables throughout the school year. Give me 5 colors that jive. I don't know if you all noticed the little poster that was along the lunch line inside the other room where it had a little poster with the celery guy standing there because the vegetable of the day was celery. So we try to promote our fruits and vegetables. We also have 95210 zip code to your health where we are encouraging students to eat 5 fruits and vegetables every day. That's the second number on your 95210 zip code to health. And then we also have the All-Star Lunch, which is the new meal pattern. And then Kids Cooking on page 9 provides opportunities for our students to be able to make fresh fruit kebabs. So there are a lot of activities that are going on throughout the school year that promotes fruits and vegetables. And then as part of our Marshall High School pilot program, we have tested scratch recipes that were developed during the pilot that are now being shared throughout our high school. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time there and ask Amy to maybe share some of the best practices that we've learned from Marshall High School that we are now applying to our other high schools.
We developed. Thank you. We developed some recipes with our chef and some things that you tasted today, the black bean and corn salad. We developed that starting last year. We developed it, and it's now on our high schools, on our regular menu, and it's also in our chef salads, which we highlighted today for you. So some of the other things that we've developed that have been very positive is the chicken quesadilla. And last year we developed a barbecue chicken pizza, and it's now on our high school menu cycle. So we've taken these chef recipes, we're testing them in the different high schools, and hopefully the ones that are most popular will make it onto the menu cycle. So we also have the Asian line that we've tested at Marshall, and we're doing it now in most of our high schools, and then we're moving to a Mexican theme line. We're a little behind because of the snow days. They really hurt us in terms of getting back on track. But they've been pretty successful, and they're simple scratch recipes. It's just taking us some time to develop them and see which ones are most popular. The ones that are most popular will hopefully make it onto the menu cycle.
Okay. Thank you, Amy.
One other thing, sorry. We're currently looking at a lentil salad. That's one of our newest ones we're looking at. And then possibly into a pasta bake. And Paul and I are going to be working on those recipes, developing, seeing how they go. Thanks.
Paul is our chef who has that has developed a lot of these recipes. So thank you, Paul. So again, just kind of related to fresh fruit and vegetable bars, we are going to expand the pilot next year, all high schools the following year, and then all middle schools the year after. And we are continuing to look at the best practice components of the Marshall High School pilot, and where we can, we are implementing those best practices throughout the system. Okay. Next on page 21 is related to vending products. As part of the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010, USDA will be issuing a science-based nutrition standards for all foods and beverages sold to schools during the school day. So this is new set of standards that we will need to implement for this coming year. Many of our products do currently meet those standards, but they are new standards being issued. So starting next school year, we will be implementing those new standards. There's also guidelines that are going to be released regarding food and beverage advertising in our schools. So we will be reviewing that as well, and developing guidelines for our schools. And then we have currently the regular soda ban pilot in 7 of our high schools. We are in contact with our beverage vendors on how we can go ahead and implement eliminating regular sodas in all of our schools. I know there is a desire from the community to have all this implemented by August of 2014. We're going to try to do the best we can, but I'm trying to just set expectations. I'm not sure all that will be, if that will be completed by 2010, but we are looking at eliminating all regular sodas in our vending machines, and we need to work with our beverage vendors, because obviously the machines need to be changed and all the products need to be changed. So it'll just take some time in order for us to accomplish that this coming school year.
And will you have some analysis by the end of this school year as to how that might have affected school revenues, that
Yes,
kind of thing?
we
Okay.
will be evaluating the financial impact to the pilot as well. And just regarding vending products, I forgot to point out, attachment B of your report kind of gives you some examples of type of vending products that we have in our machines. So that gives you a little bit more information. That is page 29. And then we try to also provide you with some examples of items that does not meet standards. Some of these on surface may sound very nutritious and healthy, but they do not meet the standards, so we do not have them in our vending machines. Okay? The next item on school store rules. This is where our current policy does prohibit sale of foods with minimal nutritional value, but this is more about how we can educate and enforce what we currently have in our policy. So our plan is to work with our school administrators and re-emphasize the importance of staying in compliance with our current policy. And then we're also thinking of preparing a list of products with low nutritional value. And that could be shared with our fundraisers, our student groups, our PTAs, our boosters, just to encourage healthy choices. So that covers most of the items that I just mentioned are under our nutrition integrity. Now I'm going to kind of move on to some of the recommendations that relate to education and community outreach. The first item, which is very exciting, I don't know if you guys have seen the new interactive tool that provides some additional information regarding our lunch options. And we're going to take just a few minutes to demo that particular application. So I'm going to ask Greg Rupert to join us. That's in our FCPS app as well as on our website. Actually, you get a lot of information on that app, but the website, wow, it's pretty cool, I have to say. So I'm going to ask Greg to kind of walk us through quickly what that tool looks like within our website.
This is the version that on the web where it has menus, and when we put our cursor over top of each item, it actually shows the nutrition content of each item.
All right, let me see if I could do justice here by walking through you So this is a link off of our Food and Nutrition Services webpage. So before he goes through the details, you could see that he has selected elementary schools on top, and then he has selected lunch. So this is the menu for our elementary schools by date for month of March. And if you scroll on top of the item, you could see the nutritional information as you scroll through each menu item. And you could see that through your FCPS app as well. So the other items that I think were pretty informative was the allergen list to the right over there, manufacturer labels. There's a link right there. So if you wanted to go to that link, you could go ahead and click on that link, and it'll takes you to the other list that we have on our website. Okay? Same thing with our manufacturer's label. It takes you directly to the label from the link. So there is a lot of information, and this is something that we rolled out on March 1st, and I think the first day of school in March, we were closed due to weather. So we have shared this information through, I believe, FCPS community newsletters. And do we do a KIP message? And
Barbara's been working on, as her team, on publicizing it.
and trying to get the information out to our community about the all the information that's now available. And this is one of the recommendations that Prismatic submitted to implement something like NutriSlice. This is the software is NutriSlice, but we're calling it the Energy Zone in our active tool, Lunch app. So that was, as I mentioned, implemented March 1st. And then, did I miss anything else, Greg, that you wanted to point out?
The widgets on the
You gotta
side,
talk on
like
the-
the manufacturer
Penny.
label, oh, I'm
You gotta
sorry.
talk on-
The widgets on the side do not appear on your cell phone, but that's why it's good to come to the website to get the more detail.
Okay, in interest of time, I'm going to kind of skip through some of these items. I will mention it quickly. Some of the ideas from the Smarter Lunch Rooms movement, we are implementing what we can as we identify and study some of the recommendations. And some of them really is the placement of your fruits and vegetables and how you would name certain fruits and vegetables, something fun like golden corn or crunchy carrots, just to kind of encourage the kids to select those vegetable options. Regarding line signage, we are evaluating programmable message boards in front of the lunchrooms to kind of show the daily menu options. And then we are also posting nutrient information on the items right above each of the item going through the lunch line, because that is something that the students have requested that we put back in the nutrient information on the lines themselves. Oh, and then the information that we're offering is on page 14 of the document. Regarding financial management, we are in the process of reviewing all the reports. We needed to upgrade our current food and services program. It's the revenue and participation program to align with our financial system to be able to produce more detailed accounting information. So we are working toward revising those reports, as well as trying to meet with our supervisors and cafeteria managers on how to read those financial reports, and coming up with some operational targets, including participation rates for each of our schools. So we're doing a lot of work there and training our cafeteria managers. Regarding payments online, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. Currently, it would require over $660,000 to eliminate the convenience fee of $1.95. We want to continue to evaluate our participation rates and see where our revenues are before we implement anything to completely eliminate the fee. So we will continue to evaluate what some of the options might be. Indirect payment to the school operating fund, we are recommending that it stay at the current level for now. And then for direct delivery, we are going to be putting in 2 different options of delivery in all future bids, where one set of deliveries will be to the central kitchens and the high schools, and the other one to all of our local schools. And then I want to move down to the professional development. And this has to do with organization structure. Prismatic had originally recommended that we hire 5 additional supervisors and 2 training specialists. We did hire 1 additional supervisor in the fall of 2013, which reduced the span of responsibilities from 17 to 14 schools. So we are making progress there. We are recommending that we hire a training specialist. This individual would help us implement and oversee the new guidelines that are getting ready to be released, and I think it would also help us with our current training efforts. And it would be more of a quality control type of position where we can ensure that there's consistency from school to school regarding training. And then we're also recommending that we hire a community outreach specialist or marketing specialist, someone that could help us promote the program, continue to get feedback from our stakeholders, our students, our community, and then to promote the program. Because I think the goal here is really trying to increase our participation rates. You know, with the implementation of the new federal meal plan, our participation rates have dropped. Same trend as rest of the country. It's not unique to FCPS. So we're trying to evaluate how we can market the program so that we can increase the participation rate. And then lastly, under wellness, it has to do with lunch start times. We currently have 66 schools that start lunch within 2 hours of start of school. The federal guidelines do say we could serve lunch between 10 and 2, and this is really just talking about how soon the lunch periods would start after they have arrived at their school. So we will be working with our school administrators because it has to do with how we can reconfigure their master schedule, getting more minutes within our current schedule. So we will be working with our school administrators and see if there are any options, possibilities for later lunch start times. All right, now before I finish my presentation, I did want to kind of provide an overview of the financial position the fund is currently in. So if you go to page 25 of the report, you'll see items where we have the red box around on the page. Those represent where our reserve balances were over time, where we think the reserve balances will go going forward. So you could see that back in 2011 or in 2012, we had 18.8 million. 2013 was the first year that we implemented the meal pattern. We used approximately $3 million of the reserve to take us down to 15.7 million. We're projecting in 2014 that we'll be using another 5 to 6 million of that reserve. And then in 2015, I believe another 3 million of the reserve. And in 2015, we are proposing a 25-cent price increase for our breakfast and lunch programs, and these numbers reflect those increased costs. So the point of, I think, kind of sharing where we are financially for the fund is that many of the items that I just went over in the action plan, we talk about piloting a lot of these programs. We really would like to evaluate the impact of the pilot programs before they're fully implemented. For the entire school system, monitoring where our finances will be next year and the years following. Because when you increase lunch prices, you tend to drop in participation a little bit the first year. And I think one of the things that we try to see how much more we would have to increase, even just to eliminate the convenience fee, would require another 10, 20 cents in the lunch price. So we want to evaluate the impacts of these recommendations this coming school year before we fully implement some of the other recommendations that Prismatic has provided.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that excellent presentation. The way we have an hour for discussion of this report, and as we know, we're about a half an hour behind because we went over this morning. We'd like to focus our discussion, and rather than having everybody have everything that they have to say about it, we wanted to start with some of the issues that we know people want to get to. So the way we are going to organize this is by asking people to have the whatever conversation we have on the fruit and vegetable bars, which we know is an interesting topic. Additives and preservatives, vending machines, and then anything else that people want to raise. So on the topic of fruit and vegetable bars, I have Mr. McElveen first, and okay, go ahead.
Hey, thank you, Mrs. Evans. I cannot overemphasize what a great moment this is and what an important moment this is for us as a board. I think the changes that are being made here are some of the most substantive that we will make as a board. They rank up there with SR&R and some other important things that we've done. And this is historically important because although our food staff has done an admirable job adjusting through the years, these are going to be some very substantive changes. And every time I engage with students, in fact, just this morning at Lee High School, there always comes a question about what are we doing as a board to improve school food. And the students are so happy to hear that there's a light at the end of this tunnel, and we can see that light today, and so that's wonderful. And just for the historical perspective, this is the culmination of 2.5 years worth of work undertaken by this board, which included the Marshall pilot, which was put in the budget right after we got on as a board, along with the study to which we're hearing a response today. And so I'm very excited for this. And I think overall staff has done a very good job, and I agree with about 95% of what's in the report. So Penny, I know that you've put a lot of work, and Susan, into this, so I want to thank you for all that. And I do want to remind everyone what one of the main purposes of this initiative was to restore our ability to provide fresher, healthier food to students. And that kind of segues to the fruit and vegetable bars, which I think are a great visual way for our students to see improvement to our system. And so I have about 3 questions with this, but I did want to give Amy and Penny an opportunity to give us an idea of how the Marshall pilot has worked, just from your perspective.
As you know, the Marshall pilot, the Statesman Station bar, probably about 70 to 80% of it is the salad bar portion. The next part of that is a hotline. So when we take our numbers and we look at the salad bar, the participation is about 30 to 40 lunches. So looking at the next part of that bar is the hotline, and that line was probably doing about 120 lunches. So looking at the amount of real estate that we've taken up and the cost that we invested in that, I'm not sure about the return on investment for 30 to 40 lunches for quite the real estate that we put into it. We take our numbers of salad bars over last year when we had kind of what we called our mini salad bar concept. We had that on the end of a line. And when we take our numbers from salad bars from last year to salad bars to this year, it stayed flat. So our numbers of participation hasn't gone up, but what has gone up is the labor, cost of food, because it takes a lot more to run that bigger salad bar. I think what we have found out that the concept on the hotline has been very successful. Also on that hotline where we did the Asian station, we did some of these other specialty items that we talked about on page 9, the chef specials. And so a lot of those have been very popular. We go back to also that our spicy chicken wrap, which we've had previously, and we've done in previous years, we also sell on that line, and it's done a good job. It's been very popular. We started the year out with also a deli line concept incorporated into that, and it was pretty flat, probably only about 15, 18 sandwiches a day. We've changed our concept on that. We're pre-making them and more in a grab-and-go concept, and that's been really successful. So we've also added to that, we were doing a turkey and cheese. We've added a tuna salad sandwich. The kids like it that they can just come up, grab it, and go. They don't have to wait for somebody to make it. So we've had the Asian station for a while, and we switched that over to a Mexican-themed line. We're making our own hard shell, baking those in the oven. It's a real attractive line. It has 2 different meat choices, beans and corn. And it's not as popular as the Asian station was. The participation is a little bit lower on that. So trying the different concepts, we're trying to think of a third concept to maybe go to, we were thinking an Italian line. So it depends, you know, compared to our other lines, it's probably not doing as much participation. And if you really just look at the number of salad bars, it's beautiful. They're doing a lovely job, fresh-made salads, lots of different salads. There's a broccoli salad, different marinated vegetables. Like I said, the lentil salad, a pasta salad. But our numbers relatively didn't go up to where you may have thought that they would have gone up on that line.
So, and thank you for that, because this is actually the first time the board has had a chance to hear any of that. When we're approached as a board from schools like Langley, Falls Church that are interested in having a similar concept as part of their renovation, how are we responding as a system to that?
Penny can probably answer that.
Where? Langley?
Yeah, upcoming renovation.
Langley has one.
Yeah, you know, I think some of the, not necessarily the real estate concept, I think once we're past the design phase makes it difficult to go back. I know we are currently working with some of our design and construction staff on how we can incorporate changes into the specs for our kitchens and our cafeteria. So that's in the works, and we have been working with Jeff and Kevin Sneed on that particular area. Now, regarding the food offerings and the options, where we know it's selling well, we are trying to and have incorporated a lot of those recipes into the current cycle of those menu options. So where we can make the changes, we're currently doing that. With the new renovations and constructions, we are trying to work with design and construction on how to modify some of the designs. Okay. I think Dr. Garza
Yeah, I would
wants
add to
pitch
that.
in.
We are talking about some different models because I think some of the challenge we're going to have is building some of what's desired within our current structure. I think when we move forward, when we're looking at design of our high schools and middle schools, more of a food court type structure are some of the ideas that we're looking at, and then pulling back and using a different way of payment. Because I think that's what slows some of this down a little bit is our current configuration around how we have kids pay, even potentially some of the reason why maybe even Marshall. But, you know, it's really with the new design where we have the opportunity to affect some of that. So that's why I do believe we have to have a continuum of options so that we can still offer as much fresh foods as possible in every site. But having kids get through those lines as quickly as possible is going to be something we're going to have to really be creative about in some situations, because I think that's a barrier. They see the long line and then they don't get in the line. So we're going to have to really be innovative about that moving forward.
And, you know, I think that's something that's interesting about the Marshall piece, because whereas the other lines are incorporated into the infrastructure, that one actually goes out into the cafeteria. So that could be a big dissuader. My final question would be on the fruit and vegetable bars themselves. As we're looking to go out and put these potentially into high schools and middle schools over the next couple of years, are we going to make them compatible for things like we've tasted today, like the wraps, potentially soups, sandwiches, so that it's not just, you know, a salad bar, but it can accommodate other different options?
We're currently the spicy chicken wrap is on our menu. It's on the high school menu every day. Same with that chicken quesadilla. We have some of these specialty items, and we're rotating them through on a daily basis in most of the high schools right now. The same with that Asian line. We are rotating it through. We're just doing it on our current line. And for the fresh fruit and vegetable bars, the concept is instead of pre-portioning in little individual servings, we're putting it out in the long black pans like you saw for your lunch. And we're letting the kids self-serve. And I think we're doing a study on that as well, because we want to see, are we going to increase participation? And I think Wes can probably address that for you, because he's already done a study at the middle school, and he's looked at some of the numbers. Because it's going to save us a little bit of labor because we're not individually portioning up, batching up. But what we're finding, and Wes has some figures, some students don't want to take the time to stop and get it. They don't want to take the time. It's just not there and ready. So he can answer that.
Thank you, Amy. There is a perception from the students that
Yeah, you're not close enough.
it's a more mature way to get their fruits and vegetables rather than small inserts. So that was a positive response that I got. These are anecdotal things I'm telling you about now. There was also a perception that the kids didn't want to bother with it. When I'd see them walk past it, I would ask them, why didn't you take anything? Because it looks terrific. Says, I don't want to bother with it, said the young man. What I do have evidence of going back for 8 weeks, and there has been a number of occasions for snow and delays and things like that do affect our attendance and participation. But when the fruit was pre-portioned for the 6 weeks that I studied before we started the pilot there with the fresh fruit and vegetable bar, I was serving about 391, this is a daily average, portions in the small inserts, the ones that we serve at all levels. When we implemented the fresh fruit and vegetable bars, the number of portions actually dropped down to, on an average, about 320. So you can see that's a more than 10% drop. I've been to the school a number of times to observe what's going on. The children are not taking as much as the 4-ounce portion that we pre-portion to give to them. They'll take a couple of apples versus the 6 that we would put in the insert. They're taking a small spoon of pineapple rather than 2 spoons to give them the proper portion. So I've actually seen a net reduction in the amount of fresh fruits and vegetable taken. Now, I've only got 3 weeks of data from South County, so this study is going to have to go on for the next few months, and I'll have more empirical data to share with you at another time. But I was surprised, to say the least. Now, I did see, and Susan was with me one day, a student that really loved mandarin oranges, and he took a whole tray of them, basically. There had to be 1.5 pounds of mandarin oranges, and that was all he had beside a bottle of water, so I don't know. But it was humorous because it does, if there are things there that they like, they can take more of it, and that's a good thing, I think. But generally, they're passing it by or they're taking less than they should. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Does that
You're welcome.
finish your questions? And I now have Ms. Schultz, Mr. Moon, Mrs. Strauss, and Ms. McLaughlin still staying on the issue of fruit and salad bars. And I'm already going to need to do a time check with all of you.
Well, mine isn't fruit and salad bar, so.
I'll come back to you then. Mr. Moon?
Okay, mine is on the fruit and salad bar. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Thanks for the presentation. I understand that in next couple of years, all the fruit and vegetable bar will be expanded to all the high schools and middle schools. But that's a pilot.
This coming school year, we're going to expand it to 10 additional schools. We currently have 4 schools that are participating, so we'll have 14. And if we find that participation rate and it's successful, we would like to expand it to all high schools the following year and then all middle schools the year
that's
after
exactly
that.
what I was going to ask you. Whether when you say pilot generally, my understanding of pilot is we are looking for some sort of indicators based upon which you will make some decisions. So whether we intended to do county-wide piloting first before we make decisions, we are going to be doing.
We're piloting in those 14 schools, so we'll study the participation rate of the salad bars versus the pre-portioned items of those same vegetables and fresh fruit.
Okay, also 14 schools on a pilot basis at this point. Next question is, what are some of the, you just mentioned about percentage of students participating in the bar versus pre-portioned. Anything else you are looking into before you make further recommendations to us?
We look at labor, because we've done a study now already, how much time it took to portion.
Cost, basically
Cost, yes. Cost of the products and labor and benefits.
So are you
So we
looking
do
for
a complete
basically,
study.
as far as cost is concerned, you're looking for at least a cost neutral Is that what you're looking for, or
Cost of the products, because it takes less sometimes to put it in the bar than the pre-portioned.
Okay.
And then the labor to do it. We've done a study on the labor to portion, and we're finding it's less labor on the bar, Wes, on that versus some, not all.
So we are looking at something that would be cost neutral, but we would come back if there is a slight incremental increase to providing the fresh fruit. Because obviously we want more consumption of fresh fruit and vegetables.
Absolutely.
So if we have to buy more, there's going to be an increased cost, but hopefully we can also promote the program to get higher participation revenue to cover that. But there is going to be a slight savings from not having to portion out the individual servings.
Okay, the next question that I have has to do with fund statement, food and nutrition services fund statement. You will explain to us how the account balance has been going down from FY 2011 of $18 million down to proposed FY 15, about $7 million. That's somewhat concerning to me that it is going down by that much, $11 million. Could you tell us where the majority of the funds are going? Is that going into upgrading the facilities?
Sure. If we go to page 25, we did try to highlight some of the big items that is impacting the fund financially. So as I mentioned, in 2013, it was the new meal plan implementation. We are also providing free breakfast and lunch to our reduced price eligible students. So we are actually providing free breakfast and lunch to both the free students as well as the students that are qualifying for reduced price. So that's at a cost of approximately $700,000 a year.
Okay.
And then any salary and benefit decisions that are made for the system also impacts this fund. So we have not had a lunch price increase in this fund since 2010. So this will be the first year that we're recommending an increase because of all the items that were impacting the fund financially. So one of the bigger impacts were probably also the VRS shift, because most of our food service workers are FCERS participants. So when we did the 5% shift, that had a significant impact. Health insurance costs, because this is a self-supporting fund, any costs, increased costs that are experienced in the operating side is absorbed within this fund.
Okay, one last question that I have is this. Going back to the fund statement, what, in your view, what is
Mr. Moon, could you hold off on that, and because we're trying to stick with one topic at a time?
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Schultz is reclaiming her time on this.
I'm gonna reclaim my spot because I thought we were talking specifically about food. My question is about the notion of what's being portrayed here as quote unquote a pilot for 10 more schools. I'm not aware of us, as a best practice that pilots become other pilots. I mean, that's what Marshall was for. Marshall was the pilot. So I'm not clear as to, there didn't appear to be a very clear explanation of why are we expanding the pilot? Why are we not just rolling it out? And if you can't roll it out to all schools, then just say we're rolling it out. And then vis-a-vis the issue of the kids taking less food off of the open bar slots, kids don't have a lot of time to eat lunch. And it could be, I don't know what the waste factor is of the individually portioned items, but I see that potentially actually as a cost savings, not so much as that we've lost the number of servings, because if you're selling the servings and the kids are throwing it away, it doesn't help them nutritionally anyway than if they ate 2 fewer apple slices.
You are absolutely correct. The only thing we have to keep in mind is part of the fruit and vegetables is part of the meal pattern. So if they don't take the right portion, we can't get reimbursed for that meal. So there is, other considerations. We want kids to obviously make those healthy choices. We want them to eat more fresh fruit and vegetables, but we also, the reason why we were pre-portioning is they meet the meal pattern requirement. So
I'm sorry, I got to clarify that. So if a kid takes 4 apple slices and eats all 4 apple slices, we don't get reimbursed because 6 apple slices is the right portion. But if they take 6 apple slices and eat 4 and throw 2 away, then we get reimbursed? Okay, well, okay, so that's not the kid's fault. That's something that we need to address. Make the apple slices on the bar bigger, so when they take 4, they've got 4 bigger slices that equal the 6 slices. They're in the pre-portion. I mean, this is like these are simple solutions to get around that. If visually they take 4, then just make the slices a little bit bigger. And then I'm looking at thank you, Dr. Garza, for being my app guide. And I'm looking at menu choices when we're talking about vegetables. And I know in my house, refried beans are not a vegetable. It's a protein. So I'm surprised to see this on our food choice today, that a refried bean is counting as vegetables. So, I do have questions like where Mr. Moon was going with the fund, and I'll hold those off. But I need a better explanation for why what I perceive as sort of a little bit foot dragging of the issue of a pilot. That's what we've been waiting for, and as Mr. McElveen pointed out, we're 2 years into this, and what we're basically hearing is it's going to be at least another 2 years before you see any kind of rollout, and I think that's unacceptable. I think we need to get to, we did the pilot. Let's roll this out.
Thank you. Mrs. Strauss, you're next.
Can I get an answer to any of that?
Okay.
There's equipment purchases to be made. That's part of the pilot. How many pans do you need in every school for every serving line? Training of our employees. It's not real, you can't just immediately go. So when we do a pilot, we learn a lot of shortcuts. We learn things that work, that don't work. We might find, for example, that on the mandarin oranges, we want to drain those so the juice doesn't get all over. So it's sort of lessons learned on pilots, and it just works best for us when we do it that way. We're not dragging our feet. We just started the pilot, January or December? And we've had so many snow days, and so we're not dragging our feet. And 10, we might find that we can do 20. But we don't quite know at this time. And we've always been pilot people to test things. We want to do it around the county to get different reactions from different student groups. So the 10 we're looking at are across the entire district.
And some would say also with the pilot, you actually complete the pilot, you assess, you evaluate, you look at your numbers, then determine whether or not you take it to the next step. So I think we've actually been aggressive in expanding the pilot. Granted, I think we all want to get out there and have these in all of our schools, but I think we have to be very thoughtful. And I think we also need to not lose sight of the fact that if we have a school that does not have an official salad bar, we've expanded the options available to them with fresh fruits and vegetables and even some of the wrap. So I think it's a progression. And I think we also need to look at how it affects the bottom line. So I do think we have to look at how does this affect consumption? How does this affect participation? I think we have to take the opportunity to learn from it, because otherwise we won't be able to financially sustain the program.
Okay, is that it? Mrs. Schultz? I'm sorry, Mrs. Strauss.
Okay, can I only talk about fruits and vegetables? I can't talk about pizza?
Well, right now we're talking about salad bars and and expanding it. So.
Well, I might sneak in a pizza. All right. First of all, lunch was delicious. It was really good. It was a great idea. And I appreciate how carefully we're trying to evaluate this, because it's running a restaurant, and restaurants always have such a small profit margin because it's a costly deal in trying to figure out how to balance it out so that it's actually sustainable. time is an interesting factor, and I know a couple of people have talked about that, because certainly for your middle and high school kids, they want to sit down and eat fast and sit with their friends. They don't want to have to spend a lot of time in a line. And it's my understanding that in what we've learned from Marshall High School has been important in not having to wait for something. And Dr. Garza, I know we've talked about sort of the sort of the restaurant configuration that you see in the shopping malls, the food court, right? Whether or not that would help to speed things up. But I do think that time just is a huge consideration. If our kids had a whole hour to relax and play and chat, it'd be wonderful, but that isn't going to happen. At the elementary level, I know when I've been at schools watching lunch, I know a concern, again, a time concern, is that when the younger children have to open containers or unwrap something, because a lot of their little fingers can't, and you've got all the adults trying to help the kids. Where are we with that piece of it in time for elementary kids to make sure they're not, how does this work with the little guys? I don't know. It's just sort of in general, because. Okay, all right, fine. I won't ask that question. Okay, or you have considered. Okay, in the fruit and salad bar, are we, for what we offer in that, we are constrained by the new federal plan. When we took at salads, I know the black bean salad was great. Can you have rice salads? You're talking about lentils. So anything that we can call a salad will meet the federal standards or not?
Well, that's what Chef Paul has to make sure when he develops a recipe, that it does meet the components, like the refried beans, I think
Right.
it was.
Right.
We don't look at it as a protein. The USDA looks at it as a vegetable.
Okay.
So that's
All right.
why we
So
do
there-
it.
so
And
we
the
are-
new regs are really sort of a challenge because you
I
need to
know.
have a red, a yellow, and so forth, yeah.
Right, and then the calorie count, I looked on my app and got my calorie count. Are the federal regulations, do they also prescribe the calories for the fruit, for the vegetable,
They prescribe the calories for the day.
for the day?
Yeah, and
okay.
there's a maximum amount of calories for the different age levels.
Right, yeah.
And they
right.
did give us some leniency this year to be more flexible on the whole grains and the protein,
was my
because we
question.
weren't able to serve peanut butter and jelly sandwich last year
I know.
because of that, but they have come around with that.
Right, because I am concerned about some of our older kids who are growing fast, and they've got to get enough to eat. And I know that a lot of those kids do not buy lunch from us because they can bring more food from home. So thanks.
Ms. McLaughlin?
A couple of things related to this fruit and salad bar. First of all, I was taking very careful notes about, if I heard you talking about the mini bar concept versus the full salad bar concept. And I really do appreciate and hope there will be very careful attention to where can we maximize, students taking advantage of the fresh fruit and vegetables. So if it is the grab and go, if it's the prepared, but I'm a little worried by the numbers you gave about the full salad bar, saying 30 to 40 lunches. Again, without any context, what does that mean compared to, however else we're serving? But I do think that we have to be very mindful when we have 200 schools that we've got to strike that balance. And I think it's absolutely an improvement having the fresh fruit and vegetable bars alone. I will echo what Ms. Schultz said. I couldn't believe I saw refried beans listed as a vegetable. That's very upsetting to me. It is not healthy as a vegetable to have refried beans. They're very high in fat, and that's just one of those things where I started looking at it and went, I hope that's not the direction we go. Ketchup used to be identified as a vegetable.
These are probably not the refried beans that you would get in all your typical. These are very much controlled, the amount of fat and salt that are in them. Yeah.
But it's
Still, I mean,
when
that's
we're
determined
talking
by the
about
federal government.
fresh fruit and vegetables, I don't know how that ends up in a fruit and salad bar. That's my concern.
No.
So, but as a vegetable, I mean, it would.
Ms. McLaughlin?
All right.
Can we move on?
That's fine. We won't debate whether it's a vegetable or not. The other thing that I was listening to the comment being made with the amount of labor that's going into the prepaid, the grab and the go. Again, I think I'm hearing that federal guidelines, if you have the 4 apples for the 6, I'd be curious if you can speak to the fact that if we're supposed to be meeting federal guidelines to get reimbursed for the food, if you have the self-serve bar like we had in there where you had the tray of apples, is it that, how are you actually measuring how many apples or the serving that Johnny took in his bowl versus Sally in her bowl? Is it, you basically cost average it?
I'm going to let Wes answer that because I had the same question and when I observed South County Middle
We're
School.
measuring these bars now by volume, by weight. So if we start with a certain amount, we add some to it, and we end with a certain amount, there's a usage factor there. Maybe it's 10 pounds, maybe it's 20 pounds. Then we take our standard, which is a 4-ounce portion for fruits and vegetables, divide it by that standard. That gives you the number of portions served. You're absolutely right. I cannot tell you how many kids had 5 ounces or 3 ounces of those that took them. What I can tell you is they're taking how much they want.
But in terms of the federal government saying, okay, Sally took 6 ounces of apples, so now you'll get reimbursed for Sally's lunch, but not for Freddie's.
How do you know it's enough to be
Right,
reimbursed?
so we are going to have
There's a problem
challenge,
there.
and
Yeah.
so we're going to train our food service workers to be able to observe a certain amount of what is being self-served to ensure that we're not, because we'll never have enough time to weigh each kid's serving. So we're just going to have to observe it and saying, yes, about this much is what would meet under the federal guidelines. Having said that, we are going to have to train our food service workers to monitor that very closely, because when the federal auditors, maybe I shouldn't say this, but no, when the federal auditors are here, we have to make sure we observe and they observe that they're selecting and picking the right portions. Yeah,
I got to
it's
be honest
critical.
with you, having 2 teenage boys in the household. First of all, they're football players, so they'd probably take 8 ounces. But when I think about, the time of having staff workers then see, did they get there has to be, and again, I guess, please tell me we're not doing this in a vacuum. What are the other school systems around the region, around the United States doing in getting reimbursed, but being able to solve this dilemma? I feel like I'm sitting here, and I know Dr. Garza is going to appreciate this. I'm a board member. I'm not a food service expert. But I'm not hearing around here that you all just learned from other school systems who already did this. What's the easy solution? It's like we're trying to figure it out for ourselves in this vacuum like it's never been done before. You guys, seriously, when I think about that, we have over 22,000 high schools in the United States alone. People are having to figure this out on how do you have fresh fruit and salad bars.
Well, we're not saying that is impeding our ability to provide fresh fruit and salad bars and vegetables. I think all we're saying is that's one of the challenges that we are facing. We will be finding a solution to make this work. We're not, so I just want you to, understand that we're piloting because we're trying to work through these concerns and issues. We will be contacting other districts. We are working with our counterparts, because it's not a challenge just for us, right?
That's
As you
the
mentioned.
point I'm making, which is what
Exactly.
I got to be honest with you. Since Statesman Station opened in September, it's not that we just started doing this in January. Statesman Station has been going since September. Even before we opened Statesman Station, I would have hoped we would have done due diligence to see, all right, we're doing something new that we've never done as a system. So let's look at other school systems around the U.S. who are being leaders in this, who are not having problems getting reimbursed at the federal level for having fresh fruit and salad bar options. So I'll move off of this. Dr. Garza, because really in the end it's my conversation with you and the board members, but please, let's speed up this learning process and stop trying to figure out just within ourselves and what we observe and what we think we can come up with. Let's find out what the other school systems did. The second thing is that when I look at the rollout plan, we are in the school year 13-14. I see that we want to, have more schools, and I'm actually comfortable with the size of our school system. That for school year 14-15, this next September, that you've got to spread it out some more and see how you're going. But as far as I'm concerned, by school year 15, I would love to hear from our superintendent why on earth, after this next school year, we're not getting it in all the rest of the schools. The rollout to go all the way to 2016-17, I smile thinking about the fact that I have an 8th grader right now who maybe by his junior year at Woodson, and any other 8th grader right now might finally, count on this. I don't think we need to be waiting that long, but I do get that you need the upcoming school year to iron things out.
And a lot of the challenge is really training all of our food service workers as well. So where we can roll out as quickly as possible, we will roll out as quickly as possible. But we need to train 1,300 food service workers. So that takes a little bit of time. We're also trying to run a day-to-day operation of providing school lunch. So, we hear you.
Well, and
I
I would I would still recommend, though, that even though we're only going to pilot 10 more schools in school year 14-15, why not, since it's not really a pilot, we've already said we want this in our schools, so start training more of those people, even if their school's not going to have it that year.
Ms. McLaughlin, I'll put that down as a potential next step. We do need to
and then
move
my,
on.
my final comment is that whether it's this issue or anything else, this board received recommendations from the Real Food for Kids Advocacy Group. And to make things easier for Dr. Garza, I'll just say it right now. Meet with them, read the recommendations, and as far as I'm concerned, I love seeing them partnering and collaborating with you going forward. They know a lot more about this than I do. The fact that Joanna Hammermaster was invited to the White House is a wonderful example of the knowledge and the value add we have by her working with our school system and her advocacy group.
Thank you.
May I add something for you, Megan? All our colleagues across the nation are facing the same dilemma as we have. I'm very active nationally. So we are not just doing this on our own and never check with others. In fact, I checked with 15 major city school districts about additives and preservatives, and none of them have a regulation.
I was talking about the fresh
No,
food and salad bar.
no, that's what I was saying.
If you've talked with them and they told you they can't solve it either, then that's concerning. But the other stuff, I agree with you, Penny. I wasn't making a comment that you're doing all of this in a vacuum. I'm just talking about the fresh food and salad bar. When I heard the hurdles from all of you about what the problem is, it was concerning to me because I started to think we can't be the only system in the country trying to figure this out.
No, and we work with them all the time. We
All
do
right.
network all the time.
I do think we need to, we've been 40 minutes on this topic, and we still have 2 more people to go. So, Ms. Reed?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and for all the work that you do. It's clear that we've made great progress. To follow up on what Ms. McLaughlin just said, I wonder whether we can continue to use the Statesman Station at Marshall as kind of a laboratory to test out other things, even the rest of this school year. I know that takes a while for the kids to learn, and you said the staff. So is that something that we could consider is to try to continue to try things and try to expedite the lines and et cetera?
We are currently using it as a laboratory. We're trying lots of different salads, different options, the new chef recipes we test there. As I said, the next thing Paul and I are working on our pasta bake. Next year, all of our grains have to be whole grains, so we have to use a reformulated pasta. So that's our next thing we're working on, and also this lentil salad. That's something else we're working on.
Okay, and I would encourage you, of course, to work with the students to try to get input from them if they still have perceptions about it taking too long or it's too difficult or whatever their reasons are, right? So is that part of your evaluation that you get ongoing input from the students and the parents?
And coming up, we are partnering
Staff.
also with the chefs the culinary department chefs, and they're going to be working on developing some salads for us as well.
Good, and that feeds right into my next question, yes, which was, are we using our food service academies in any way, and could we maximize the use of them, since our kids, in fact, are learning to cook? So to what extent are we doing that, or could we do that even more?
We are partnering with the chefs, and they're going to start working this spring on developing some salads that we can use in our salad bars and our fruit and vegetable bars. And we partnered at Marshall with the chef. We did put his soups on.
Very good.
Times.
And last but not least, I also share the concern regarding the rollout of, I don't know if we're still calling it a pilot, in actuality, the rollout of whatever this new fresh, whatever we're calling it. But is there another approach that we could take? In other words, rather than, these lucky 10 get it next year and the rest of you guys, you're going to have to wait. Is there a way, in other words, we talk about equity on this board quite a bit, is there another way to look at this that perhaps everybody could get a microcosm or a mini approach to fresh fruits and vegetables where everybody could get something as opposed to just a few getting, so in other words, one size doesn't necessarily fit all. Have we thought about that?
There are different ways that we're offering the fresh fruit and vegetables. So whether or not it's in a self-serve bin unit, salad bar type, or in a pre-portion, they are getting the offerings, just in a different manner. And many of the recipes that we've tested for the Marshall pilot, if we can get it to go into the menu cycle for the high schools, and those are the popular items, they are offered in our high schools. They've all been incorporated. What we know is good sellers, best sellers, they have been incorporated into our other high school
menus. Very good. I'm sure you've thought of that, and that's very helpful to know. And my last comment, because my time is up here, is how do we determine which are the lucky schools who get it next? And the reason I ask that is, of course, some on the list are schools with high poverty, but some are not. And, for some kids, this may be the only meal that they get all day, which we all know. So to what extent do you consider the needs of the students as you select the schools?
This was just a goal. We might put them all on next year. See, we don't stick, but we came up with a guide, the 10. But we might do all of them. And we probably will go out faster than what it says. But, you try to be conservative. I wouldn't want to say we're doing them all, and then you come back to us and say, oh, you only did 10. do you know what I mean? So that was just a figure that we gave. But we might have all of them up by next year.
They are,
yes.
Because they are our central kitchens, the schools selected were our central kitchens in some of the bigger high schools and secondary schools. That's how they were selected.
And I'm going to take a turn before I go to Mr. Stork. First of all, that's a perfect segue. I'm delighted to hear that you might be going faster and that you'll go as fast as you can. I'm also very pleased to hear that you're looking at the issue of time and presentation, because I think, as with any new thing, it's going to take a while for the students to get used to the idea that there's this new thing there and that there's this new food there, and get out of old habits and into new ones. So the idea of the line being too long, the proportions and all of that, I think that I'm glad to see that you're looking at all aspects of it, as well as ways to promote and market, basically, the healthier, fresher food. So I'm delighted with that. I see that you're going to look for opportunities to promote this at the elementary school level. And I'm wondering about whether you've been looking at elementary schools that are under renovation. And of course, I've got a brand new school a campus of a school being retrofitted right now over with the office building for the Bailey's, second Bailey's campus. Have you looked at putting the fruit and salad bar or that type of thing over in that cafeteria while we're in the process of construction?
No, because as you know, Bailey's, both sites, we need to get the kids through because they're very high free reduced. We have a lot of children, and it does take more time to do that.
So you're not going to be looking at that?
No, we're pre-portioning.
But will you have any kind of healthy, fresher food?
Oh, we do it every day.
But I mean, for the...
Yeah. Yeah.
Elementary schools.
Right.
All elementary schools are offered fresh fruit and vegetables
Right.
every day.
But I thought that you were going to be looking for opportunities to have
We are.
a
We
fruit
looked
and
at
salad
some.
bar.
Yeah. We looked at some other ideas as well for our elementary school kids, but because we have so many students in our elementary schools, the cost started to be somewhat prohibitive if we were to offer a fresh fruit additional offerings per week. But we are looking at a lot of different options, and we're also trying to work with the principal advisory group on how we can promote fresh fruit and vegetables and increase the offerings in our elementary schools. Currently, our fresh fruit and vegetable bars are going out to our middle and high schools. The elementary schools will still have the pre-portioned fresh fruit and vegetables, but they are offered fresh fruit and vegetables every day as part of their lunch offerings.
Well, so when you say in here that you're going to assess other opportunities to promote fresh fruits and vegetables and evaluate a continuum of options, what are you doing that's new?
We were trying to look at and seeing if we can have a different fresh fruit program. So, for example, we have 9 schools currently at the elementary level that participate in the federal fresh fruit and vegetable program, which is an additional fruit item per week, I believe, for the 9 schools. So we were evaluating the cost impacts if we were to expand that to all of our schools. And as we calculated the cost impact, it was in millions of dollars. So we're trying to evaluate what different options that we might have to be able to provide additional ways to promote the fresh fruit and vegetables at the elementary level. So we are evaluating different options, but because the size of our school system, the cost is somewhat prohibitive when we try to do an extra, like I said, mimicking or trying to mirror the federal program was between $6 to $7 million.
Well, then I guess I would say that as a next step, I would want to see what sorts of options that you come up with and what the and your evaluation of each one, because I do think it's critical for the fresh fruits and vegetables to be promoted to our elementary school students.
Absolutely.
Mr. Stork?
Thank you, and I would echo many of the comments that have been made. I'd like prefer a rollout of the additional things that we're doing. I'm not hung up on a particular format. I just think we need to try different things and have different opportunities to see not only the time presentation, but also the cost. We can't ignore that, and I don't want to ignore that. But I know part of the process is to test different things, and I think what you're hearing from all of us is that we want to keep moving as quickly as possible. We think we can move more quickly than we've had in the past, and I think that's the urgency you're feeling and hearing from all of us. My really one question was, and I just really was struck by this, at West Potomac High School, you have the average daily sales for the salad bar is 83 students, and then you're looking at Marshall, which is at 39. Is any particular assessment or comment or any sense of why that's so different? I realize there's more students at West Potomac, but I don't think there's that many more. So, and there's other school differentials here as well. So
that's our challenge, too. We don't quite understand it. Madison has 9. But West Potomac was our first salad bar, our mini salad bar. I think we did it 5 years ago. And so maybe we just don't have the answers, although Amy says the kids she's spoken to really like the hot lunch versus the cold salad bar. So that's what we're thinking. But I did meet with SAC, the high school students. I surveyed them. We do it annually. And we get comments back, and some of them will say, gee, I'd like a salad bar, but then when we have it, and it looks as beautiful as Marshall, they don't want it. And I know the research is showing that with the new meal pattern, elementary students are having to take more time to eat fresh fruits. And so they're not eating it, they're tossing it. That was the latest research I read. But yeah, we're baffled by this too, Mr. Stork.
Well, I believe in good research, good data, and I don't want to not include that as part of our process, but I think what you're hearing is we'd like to try to keep it moving more quickly than it has. So appreciate all the work that's been done. Thank you.
Ms. Hines?
Thank you. I apologize for being late. If I've asked this question already, I'll take my answer offline. If someone has asked it already, sorry. My question is about fresh food bars at two schools in particular, schools that are being renovated. There's Thoreau Middle School and Thomas Jefferson High School. It's my understanding that parents and the principals and a lot of folks at both of those schools have looked at the Marshall pilot and have expressed interest in having something like that in their buildings as they're being renovated. And I just kind of wanted to know where we are on that.
I've been asked about the TJ one, and it's my understanding, when was the design done for TJ? Over 2 years ago? So, I mean, it's not, there's going to be lots of options for kids at the TJ and the TJ design, and there'll be a lot of fresh fruit and vegetable options. But in terms of a salad bar like Marshall, that was not in the design of TJ. I haven't asked about Thoreau. I don't know how many years ago Thoreau was designed.
It's a couple of years, too. Thoreau serves only an average of 200 lunches a day, and that's a big concern to us. It's one of those middle schools like Cooper, very low participation. And so, and I don't remember right now offhand, Pat, how many lunch periods they have, but the goal is to get them through quickly, because that's something the students have always been concerned about, length of the line. But no, TJ's going to have a salad bar back. They had one before. But we worked with the principal, administration, and parents years ago on how they want it, and that's got a unique design. We go upstairs to the planetarium. We have another serving area upstairs, and then we have downstairs. So whatever they wanted is what, working with DNC, we came up with.
So then on Thoreau, there's no plan for a fresh food bar there at all?
Fresh fruit. We could test that one, the fresh fruit vegetable like you had here. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. The vegetable fruit bar like you all saw. We'll do that at Thoreau because it's a middle school and we could test that.
Thank you very much. So we're about an hour into our conversation. So what I'm going to suggest is that we do another round of anyone who wants to talk about the two other topics we'd identified, additives and preservatives and vending machines. And I would ask that everybody really try to keep their questions and comments as concise as possible, because we do want to get to a point where everybody can ask sort of general questions as well. Mr. McElveen?
Okay, yes. So my remaining questions have to do with vending, and specific to the soda pilot and phasing out regular sodas across the county. Is that not something that would be required as part of the federal guidelines that are coming down to us next year?
I believe so.
Okay, so it's really not something we're leading on as a district, and I think that needs to be made public, that this board is not taking a position that's any different than what others are taking. However, I do think it's problematic that we still have diet sodas in our machines. And from my perspective, those are worse than regular sodas. And so I don't think at this board table today we can make a decision on that, but I do hope that as a system we're looking at ways to start phasing out diet soda as well.
Yeah. Penny corrected me. The standards are actually for the during school day. So.
And our vending's after school. But we're still going to work on that, Ryan. We're just working with, Chuck's been working with the beverage companies, because there's a lot of machines involved. But no, that's our goal.
And finally, I think it would be important for us as a board to get the data from the pilots. I know we have some preliminary data, but correct me if I'm wrong, we're seeing participation fall, but revenues increase. Okay, thank you.
Ms. McLaughlin, to be followed by Ms. Strauss and Mrs. Schultz.
I wanted to echo what Mr. McElveen had just said about the sodas. I noted during the presentation there was, concerns about what the financial impact might be on our schools. And I just wanted to share with my board colleagues and Dr. Garza, I don't care. I'll be honest with you, it would really upset me to think for a moment that are, doing sodas in our schools. I mean, I do care in the sense that we will need to help our schools if that was revenue that they needed and relied on to do good things in our buildings. But we just need to find the revenue in a different way then, because the thought of us relying on revenue based on sodas, when what I'm really hoping is that we can move in the direction of educating our young people for lifelong decision making about sodas, I think is really important.
I just think we need to know the answer to the question.
Yes.
For first of all, the first reason that you just mentioned is if there's a big differential, we have to contemplate how do we make up that difference. But secondly, there might not be a big differential, and we need that so we can, as we create advocates in our principals, help them, develop support for it.
Absolutely,
and
and
we just need to be able to answer that question.
Yeah,
I think that's some of the fear that some of our principals have, and it may be unfounded.
I agree with you, Dr. Garza, and that's why I tried to rephrase what I was saying. The I don't care was not, I didn't value your desire to have that data of information to help us have a meaningful conversation on it. I just kind of wanted to preemptively let you know as a school board member, I'm so okay in losing that revenue, and we'll just have to figure out another way to get it, so that we don't lose whatever the principals were relying on for it.
Mrs. Strauss? I'll go back. My pizza thing, I like the creative pizzas, and I hope they sell because those are sort of a hot food, and something the kids are used to. So I liked your chef special on this pizza stuff. The vending, knowing that the community use of our schools is actually greater than our own use, and whatever we provide in vending machines, obviously we want to have appropriate nutritious stuff. And our own students who use our vending machines after school, usually those are kids who are very hungry and they're getting ready to go to an athletic practice, a play, what have you. Because if they can't get good, nutritious, high-calorie enough food through a vending machine, a lot of them go off campus, go to McDonald's, et cetera, and eat that way. So I guess my question on the federal guidelines, what kind of guidelines for calories, et cetera, do we have any in vending? I mean, and having nothing to do with soft drinks or anything else, just trail mix, yogurt, whatever we can actually vend.
On page 29, we give you a little picture of one of our vending machines.
Right, I see that, yeah. And I always take a look at them when I'm in school. But with the federal guidelines going forward, can a student get something that is fairly nutritious and almost a complete meal as possible in a vending machine? Because some of the kids are really looking for that. Quick. And do the feds care?
Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Yeah.
These are really supplements what we provide during the day. So I don't think what we're going to have in the vending machine is going to replace a meal.
Right. But some growing children are very hungry. And I'm just, because there are other institutions that have amazing things in vending machines. If you go to a hospital, you can get a whole meal in a vending machine. I don't know if we can ever get to that point. Just curious.
Mrs. Schultz.
We're having kids snack popcorn discussions over here, so it was germane to the conversation. First of all, I don't see why we can't capitalize on the fact that we do have vending machines and have, frankly, bidding wars. There's so many great organic companies out there, nutritious snack companies, and having the opportunity to place, everything from Luna bars, Z bars, K bars, number 2 bars, which are, live whole food bars. I mean, there's so many options that are available that if we put out a solicitation that says that we're inviting, companies who produce, foods that meet these specifications, and oh, by the way, don't meet these specifications, don't have these additives and whatnot in them, that we create an opportunity for them to product place to 180,000 kids. So that's a money-making opportunity in rethinking and redesigning the whole problem to begin with. And that includes the drinks as well. You have everything from Honest Tea to, all of those out there that are alternatives. So, I'm not in favor of banning. I'd put a big gulp in there that's, would drive New York City off the cliff, if that's what the kids wanted. But the options are so plentiful in terms of opportunities, and I think that this is one of those partnering opportunities that exist for us and large food organizations across the country to say, we're making different choices for our kids, we're creating different options, and oh, by the way, you get to product place, and you get to pay us to do it. So it's a moneymaker and a winner all the way around. That's the kind of rethinking and retooling that I'm hoping goes into this. In terms of the additives, while I appreciate some of the progress that we've documented here, and in relation to maybe other districts, I don't think that what other districts have or haven't eliminated should be the benchmark for us. I think that when we're looking at the remaining additives, I think we need to have a prioritization schedule on saying we need to get rid of these. I mean, it's taken, I don't even know how long, but finally, the clamoring against the Crafts and whoever of the world that we're going to finally get to natural colored, cheese slices for kids. The last time I checked, cows don't make orange milk. So, why we can't put on this, agenda, hey, you know what, we are going to eliminate, like San Francisco, these additives by a certain point, put it out there as a goal, and then we know and understand what the goal is and we're driving towards it, and have it be pretty aggressive. And if we put it out there, there will be food companies that fill in the middle, where those who are unwilling or unable to comply with an RFP specification will fall away, and those who are willing and are cooperative with us will go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take a turn on this issue, and I'll follow up with that as well. You all have done marvelous work on reducing the amount of additives and preservatives in the food, and I see that our advocates are hoping to have an outright ban on additives and preservatives. Is that our goal? Are we attempting to have no, is that our ultimate goal? No additives, no preservatives in our food?
That is our goal, but I think even prismatic study showed that, it's sometimes you can't eliminate it 100%, right? So what was listed on page 6 are the items that were identified through the superintendent's nutrition task force. So this really isn't comparing and benchmarking against other districts. This was something that was identified by our community, and we have been working toward eliminating all these items since school year 2010-11. And our goal is to eliminate all of them, and in our action plan, you'll see a incremental increase each year trying to eliminate all the items that are identified.
And I would ask that a next step be for you to come back to us and let us know, how that's going, and if there are any things that you believe that for some reason we cannot eliminate or ban, to let us know what those preservatives and additives are. Because I think there's an interest on this board in seeing that. And secondly, on the vending machines, I'm also the liaison for the Park Authority Board, and I believe we also supply, is it some or all of the vending machines in the rec centers?
I think
You do most of them. So will these changes that we're implementing, will they affect the Park Authority, the rec center vending machines as well, or is that a completely separate?
if they ask for it, and they do ask us for specific snacks, and Chuck works very closely with them.
So what we do for our school system doesn't automatically roll over. That's according to what the Park Authority wants us to do.
It's what they want us to
Want
do.
us to do. So
Right.
if somebody were advocating for this, they would need to do it through the Park Authority Board.
Right.
Yeah, okay. And I think that's, and Ms. Hines, Ms. Hines.
Thank you. I just had a couple more questions. When I'm looking at the report and the timelines for things, like, for example, nutrition information and smarter lunchrooms movement ideas, and I see in there that the goal is continuous. I'm just wondering if we're going to have any sort of, it's hard to measure that. Is there going to be any way that we can sort of set goals and measure them over time for how successful we're being?
Well, we could identify what we've implemented and what we are looking at, but I think sometimes those recommendations change as well from time to time. So I think, I'm trying to find the page. In the detail part of the report, we do mention some of the items that we implemented, but yes, we can provide you a list of all the recommendations. And, we were talking about the federal meal pattern earlier, and one of the recommendations out of that smarter lunchrooms is actually do a grab and go for the federal meal pattern. So it's some of the recommendations, we're trying to provide a self-serve fresh fruit and vegetable bar, yet in order to do the federal meal pattern, one of the best practice is do it all as a grab and go. So we're kind of looking at to see which ones that we can implement within FCPS, given some of the other priorities of the board and the community.
Understood. I guess my question still would be, if we have a purpose for one of these goals, for example, nutrition information, we have a goal that we're shooting for, right? Is that parents, students, the community will have more information. So I wonder if there's any way that we could set up sort of metrics to measure. Maybe we do surveys. And if the goal of the smarter lunchroom movement is that kids are eating better and there's less time in the lines, or whatever the goals are, you know what I mean? Because I don't know that it, if these are going to be meaningful, then I guess we kind of have to say, well, why are we doing this? And then can we measure how well we're doing at what we're trying to achieve?
And then I think your point's well taken. So how do we measure all this, right? And I think that annually you have operational expectations. There is a report that you all, the food service department, actually presents every year to the school board. And so we could make that part of what we report, what we actually report out on. So we'd have to look at those operational expectations, because I would think, you would hope that those would be embedded here. So maybe we report on the plan.
Good.
Something like that make more sense maybe in terms of metrics?
Or, yeah, and to be some kind of measure. That would be good, yeah. I mean, I know that you put a lot of work into this, and, it'll take some time to do the rest. My last question, I think, is on the facilities question. When I asked about the fresh food bars in TJ and Thoreau, I guess the answer is pretty much, well, those plans have already been made, right? So we didn't plan for certain things in there, so we can't go back. So I'm kind of wondering, what is the plan going forward for when we do design and construction, right, for new construction or renovating, including a kitchen? Do we have a plan for making sure that we incorporate fresh food bars?
That's actually something we're looking at right now in terms of the ed specs. As we start to think about some of our new design work, we are challenging ourselves. I think it's going to come up in the conversation that you all planned already around the CIP and some of those ed specs. For example, I think I mentioned this example to you. Not only our cafeteria design, how that looks, but also, do we want to look at ninth grade centers so that we are able to add capacity in a way that doesn't feel like we're just, making mega schools. I mean, those are things I think we're going to really have to wrestle with around our design moving forward. And it's going to has to be more than, you all have to really be a part of that conversation. But we have some ideas for you to contemplate.
So I think that wraps up, actually it foreshadows the next section here, which was just anything else that people had to raise about this report. And Mr. Moon, I have not forgotten you. I put you back on. So we have Mr. Moon, Mr. Stork, Mr. McElveen, and Ms. Schultz.
Just one last quick question on the fund statement. What do you think is the minimum amount of reserve, the balance we need to have to be financially prudent?
You're asking a financial person, so to be prudent, I would think it would be about 3 months of operating expenses because you have.
How much is that?
I believe that is what we're trying to shoot for, like $20 million. So we're way off from where we
Thank
were
you so
trying
much.
to. And then the other piece we have to remember this year, we lost not only lunch sales for those days we're not making up, we lost the federal reimbursement piece as well. So we got quite a bit of lost revenue going into the fund. So,
I'm not going to ask you this question about how to make up to be $21 million, but other time.
Thank you, Mr. Moon. Mr. Stork.
Thank you. I have two questions. One is on the artificial ingredients preservatives. Tell me what the impact would be if this board made a policy that we were not going to permit any artificial ingredients or preservatives in the foods that we offer to our kids. And I don't necessarily need an answer this moment, but I need some sense of what would be the process that you would go through to address that. And then I have a follow-up question.
just say.
Well, is there a process that you would, what would
I mean, obviously, we would have to go and identify the items that has the current 24 occurrences, and then we need to find the alternative, and then how it fits into the meal pattern, because our meal pattern is set based on our current offerings, so we have to be able to find the substitute. So then we would have to go back out on bid to see if we could find a substitute and how much cost that would be to incorporate it into our menus.
Some of the policies that we've looked at as sample policies, they'll say things like, to the extent practical, because some of this is about, is there availability of product? To some extent, and sadly, maybe this is sadly so, this is, I think, the conversations like this are just beginning to happen in other school systems across the country. So we have to have product available. So I think we'd all would love it tomorrow if we said none at all. I just don't know if we would find ourselves in a position where we wouldn't have product available to us to meet the needs of kids. I think it's something we're really going to have to continue to investigate. I think our providers, we need to put it in our contracts, and that was a recommendation that we have in here that we're going to be doing. So I think, what is it, demand, will change, I think, the product available to us. But to have zero, absolutely none, I don't know that there's been from what I gather from looking at other school systems, I don't think there have been any that have said absolute zero tolerance for fear of just yet. Is the marketplace ready for that? Isn't that what you're finding too?
Some of it, I'm sure, is a relative thing. Some people might view high fructose corn syrup as not being a big deal compared to, some other ingredient, because it's still based on corn or whatever. So there is a conversation there of sorts, but I think there needs to be some more conversation about that. Where I'm going with this issue in general is that we've done a lot over the last 10 years to change the focus of this board and this system to the whole child. I look at the governance process that we implemented 2006, where we did our 3 student goals: academics, essential life skills, responsibility to the community. What did that do? That took us out of just focusing on academics to looking at the whole child and their characters and behaviors and how the community fits in with them. We looked at the SR&R, as mentioned earlier. I thought was another kind of good connection about how we're trying to look at the whole child and have them become a healthy, happy adult. And this truly is the other piece of that. What they put in themselves, if you will. Food is the ultimate nutrition, the ultimate vitamins and minerals, if you will, and making sure that they treat themselves as the temple that they in essence are, particularly if they want to live a longer, happier, healthier life. Which gets to my last question, which is the follow-up from this. You referenced it. I think I would like to see us some way or other incorporate these recommendations and the follow-up to these recommendations in our student achievement and our operational expectations. And I don't know if that's been given thought in this process, and I'm kind of putting it back to you all. If you looked at this more globally about how you could see this being reported on a more traditional or more of a standardized method so that we can see that and we can respond to that on a routine basis, more of an annual basis, or even semi-annual, depending upon the need.
That's actually why I brought it up. I think once we get this plan where we need it, then to me this is what we should be, this is what we should be reporting out on. But that's something I don't want to say we're scrapping the OEs, but I do think it's something I think it's worth looking at. Once we have this at a place where you all think, okay, that's the direction we're going, that's where we're headed. To me, it makes sense that this is what we provide measures to you all on, and maybe it does become, the OEs. But I think we'd have to look at it.
And I realize it's a much deeper level of detail that I might want on a routine basis, but I think the community would obviously appreciate that. So it's really, what is that balance? I'm looking for you all, staff, to kind of guide us in that process. I mean, and the board needs to obviously decide at what level it wants to be educated or brought up to date on a routine basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McElveen.
Yeah, so just building on what Mr. Stork says, I envision two next steps. There may be more, but one would be looking to Dr. Garza to eventually come forward to the governance committee with her recommendations. We've tried this before, so hopefully it'll work this time in terms of this, and I think it's laid out very nicely up here, so that's good. And then second, when we discuss about renovations and the CIP, I think including this as part of our charrette, which I'm not sure where we are on the schedule for, but I know it's coming. So if we could include that in the conversation, that'd be great.
Thank you. Ms. Schultz, to be followed by Ms. McLaughlin.
Okay.
And then I think we're just about ready to wrap up then.
Okay, a couple of things. Can we go to the, Ms. Quinn, the $600,000 that you say it would cost for us to eliminate the $1.95 fee? I'm one of the parents that refuses to pay the $1.95 fee. And I don't know, maybe I'm a cheapskate, but I won't do it. So I'd like to know how much it costs us to process a check. What's the labor to process the check? What are the risks associated with handling cash? How much does it take for us to transport, keep safe, count cash?
That's one of the things that we're trying to study because we realize there will be some savings for not handling cash and checks, but until we know how much of that is going to shift to the credit cards, because if we're going to subsidize or absorb that fee, as that usage goes up, the fees will go up. So we realize there is going to be some savings, but we also think that if there is not a convenience fee, the usage, like some parents, so we are studying that to see how much money can be saved by converting that to eliminating the fee. But we have to keep in mind that we're always going to have cash and checks.
Okay. No, we don't always have to have checks because we can say we don't take them. So it's absolutely true. So, these are things that need to be contemplated because I think that there is a tremendous amount of risk in terms of the cash that we could mitigate and move this forward and have, these balances. And parents could potentially, if the way it is they're sending in the cash and then it's going on to their account anyway. So the labor of managing the accounts is still happening because we're having to have people manage the cash, then translate that into whatever the account balance is. So that's costing labor. So that's costing us money as well.
As a follow-up.
So I am interested in that as a follow-up. Second of all, the $226,000 is contemplated for a training specialist and a community outreach. I'm not going to be more vehement on anything in this study other than no way am I going to say that with DCCO, which is supposed to handle community outreach, that belongs in DCCO. And the fact that $250,000 contemplated going forward for a training specialist and community outreach under this proposal, that's probably stunned me more than anything else. That needs to be within the sustainable existing budget of FNS, not expanding and adding more people to do the marketing. So that's a non-starter for me. And then a little bit on Mr. Moon and I were on the same page. Can we get to the page that has the little red boxes on the ending balance within FNS? I don't know which one that is. 25, 45, sold. So, and I don't know what will happen. I mean, what's contemplated in those last two columns, if those numbers are the 10.1 and the 7.18, are those figures contemplated to drift down to the bottom? Are those going to be?
They do when we experience actual. So when you see 2011, 12, and 13, because those are actual years that we finished the year with, we still have the reserve. But 14 and 15, because the reserve is appropriated with the expenditures on budgeted columns, they tend to show up above the disbursement
Right, but it's projected that those will wind up.
That
Okay,
10
so
and 7
my
will
question
come.
is, for the fiscal year 11 to 13 period, there was a 16% reduction in that 2-year period from for actuals, and in the same period of time, the projection is that there's going to be a 56% reduction from 13 to 15. What has transpired? What is different that you're going to have 56% less ending balance in a 2-year period that previously was about 16%? Because that's a showstopper that all of a sudden, we went from 18.6 million to 15.6 million fiscal 11 to 13, but fiscal 13 to 15, it's a 56% drop.
So as I mentioned, on the bottom of that page, we do talk about some of the significant drivers to those numbers. So as I mentioned in 13, it's mainly the revenue drop and some of the implementation of the salary increases and retirement health insurance rates. Same thing with 2014. With this particular fund, when we did the VRS shift, it added costs to the fund. So that was significant. We had a 2% market scale adjustment that started in January. We had other retirement health insurance increases. And we have to keep in mind, in 14, we did not increase lunch prices. So our revenue is staying pretty much flat if we kept the same participation rate, but all the costs are increasing.
It's all labor. It's all labor. Really.
It's labor, and we're still experiencing the $700,000 for our free reduced price eligible students that we provide free breakfast and lunch. So there are some other activities within the program that cost.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and last but not least, Ms. McLaughlin, and then we will do next steps and wrap up.
One of the things that I really do appreciate about our work sessions is it is the only time that the 12 of us can have this conversation with our superintendent and hopefully provide our best thinking to help her. And so that's where I hope my remarks will come in, is just one of 12 voices for Dr. Garza to consider. I do share my colleagues' desire that as much as possible we can follow in the wake of schools like San Francisco school system to identify if they have a food supply to be able to meet their school system's needs. Then we can look at maybe the size of our school. How does that compare? Because I realize that's on the West Coast, we're on the East Coast. I mean, Dr. Garza, you're absolutely correct that we have to be able to have a food supply, but I think if you know that as a board, we share the community's desire, and I believe yours as well, to move in that direction of removing as much additives, then I think that's where confidence comes from in the community, is knowing we're working toward that as in a dedicated fashion as possible.
Yes, in fact, so I can tell you, I've pulled up personally, have done some research on this, and probably have pulled policies from, I gave them all to Susan, 10 different school systems. So, I mean, we're studying what other systems that are considered a best in class in this area. And San Francisco is probably one of those, but there are others. So, yeah, I think we can get there. It's just, we also have to be able to, but even San Francisco doesn't say complete elimination.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I mean,
So we are
everything's
looking at-
within what's reasonable and manageable, but I think it's the commitment that the community hearing us talk to the commitment first is a great direction for us to be going to. The second thing is that it's interesting, Ms. Schultz brought this up, and Ms. Quinn, you echoed it, the fact that we didn't increase the cost of our meals. I mean, we've been talking about the challenges of our budget since the recession. We've been talking about cost of inflation. We've been talking about just the cost of labor. And what I didn't hear today is the why. Why didn't we increase the cost of the meals? Even if it's just incremental, I mean, the bottom line is, I think that for our families, the 75% who do not have free and reduced lunch needs, they want to have healthy, appetizing food. And I'd like to just understand, if we know that's the cost of doing business, why didn't we raise the prices incrementally over time to help cover these demands?
I think a lot of it was, during the tough economic times, when we first went into the recession, it was we didn't want to be increasing lunch prices on a regular basis. So could we have increased it last year? Probably. But as we were monitoring all the things that were going on, we didn't expect the impact of the meal plan, the federal meal plan. We didn't expect that participation rates would drop that significantly, and it happened throughout the country. So now that we're reevaluating the financial position and the condition of the fund, we are starting to see, and obviously we need to, as you mentioned, increase it incrementally, right? So in order to do some of these other recommendations and to eliminate that convenience fee, we probably will have to increase lunch prices again in 2016. But it really stemmed from the fact that we were going into such a terrible economic times in the 2010, 11, 12 that we really did not consider increasing lunch prices because our resorts were still healthy then.
And I think that's the important distinction, because as a parent who ended up paying the $100 fee per athlete with boys who play 3 sports a year, during the recession at the worst time, my family was incurring about probably $600 in fees a year, versus the 25 cents to the meal would have been very different. I think the distinction you made there is that we weren't at the time seeing a revenue hit to food and nutritional services. Now that we see it there, I think as we explained to the public, we're moving in a positive direction for healthier foods for our kids. But the cost of food in this country will continue to grow each year, and we have to be cost neutral. So I think that the public can understand that, and I'm supportive as a board member to help us move in this positive direction. It may take some revenue to do it.
We also did provide you with some comparison of lunch prices on the last page of the report, just for your information, if you wanted to see what the lunch prices were in other jurisdictions.
Well, for the sake of anyone who might be watching this, does it specifically indicate, are we in the middle of the pack? Are we the least expensive, most expensive?
Ms. McLaughlin,
Yeah.
could we finish up? I think that's something.
That's fine.
That,
I mean,
people can read this and
that's fine.
find
Well,
out for
then
themselves. And
what
do
I
think we
didn't hear any
do
of our
need to-
colleagues speak to is what Ms. Schultz raised, which is the $226,000 being proposed for 2 positions. Again, I have real reservations about spending the money in those 2 positions there. I'd like to see how we can find the staff within our system already. And I got to tell you, I even looked at the salary proposals for those 2 positions. And going back to this morning's presentation where we saw, I understand salary and benefits, but I'm just saying those are costly positions when you think about
So let's consider that. I think what we can do now is, Mrs. Reed reminds me that we did not do the next steps on the budget. So if we could start by pulling up the next steps on the budget and then move on.
Let's,
Do this one first? All right, that's fine, if that's easier. So, Dr. Garza, do we have a list of next steps? I've heard a few.
You know that I have, the caveat is I'm listening to you all and I'm trying to write at the same time, so anyway, so if I miss anything, you will not offend me.
Yeah, I've
my
made some
grammar,
notes
I
too,
probably
so.
have some problems with the grammar.
Yeah.
Okay, provide a follow-up related to an update on additives and preservatives, and which do we specifically plan to completely eliminate?
Well, I would expand that because I would like to see the viability of completely eliminating additives and preservatives. And if that is not viable, then, what is the outer limit of that? And I didn't say that particularly well, but I think you...
To the greatest extent possible.
Right.
Is that okay? I don't know what you're wanting.
Oh,
Right,
I
to
think
include whether or not
I-
it's viable
right,
to completely
and eliminate all additives and preservatives. And if not, which ones can't be completely eliminated?
Is it possible to have, if we can't have that, something similar, that we have a preference in RFPs for, that there's a purchasing preference in RFPs for companies that have either no
So I
or
guess
fewer additives?
Consider putting something into the RFPs.
That's
that would-
actually already in the plan?
That's in the plan.
That's
All
already
right.
represented. We intend to do that.
All right.
So what you're contemplating is that there would be like a price differential, so that if you would be able to pay more on an RFP, that would not throw somebody out if they had fewer additives, so that the consideration would be that all things being created equal. That
Let me
if they
say
have-
that differently.
Okay.
Because I think what it would be is a preference would be given to any vendor whose product had the least amount of additives and preservatives.
Even if it costs slightly more?
Yes.
Okay, good.
You could rank
Great.
it.
That's what I'm looking for.
Okay, so prepare a recommendation for the governance committee about how the aspects of this plan would be
Prepare a
embedded.
recommendation for the governance committee about how the aspects of this plan would be embedded in OEs, or definition around measurement that we could report on an annual basis.
Okay. Does that...
And all these are going to be a
I
little
think
bit
that
cumbersome
was-
because I'm...
That was Mr. Storks. Does that capture it? Okay.
Include in the scheduled conversations around the CIP discussion about the future standards for cafeterias and our educational specifications, and that's not worded very well, but I think I get to the essence of, Ryan brought that one up, to make sure that that's embedded within our plans around CIP discussions. Is that correct, Ryan? Okay. And then the final one I caught, and I may have missed something, but prepare a report detailing the costs associated with collecting money, and prepare recommendations for how we could collect these monies without cost to the parent.
And also capturing savings, right? You wanted to capture savings from more people using the credit card. Wasn't that right, Mrs. Schultz? Because you were saying that there would be, Mrs. Quinn, or weren't you saying there would be some savings from more people using credit cards rather than checks and cash and whatnot? Yeah. And actually, I thought there were a couple more. I heard one about the possibility of eliminating diet sodas from our vending machines. Mr. McElveen, that was yours. Did you want us to explore that? Okay. And
On the one that's up now, I just wanted to, on the prepared report detailing the costs associated with collecting the money, one of the things I wanted to put in there, or at least identify, and maybe just to follow up on, is we have the same issue for anybody who pays taxes to the county. They don't accept, unless you pay an extra fee for it via credit card or any other source, or even do an ACH. ACH is automatic direct withdrawal from your bank account. They won't do it, even though it would cost them like 30 cents, and by the time they process their money, it costs them a lot more. Maybe to at least go to the county and talk with them that maybe there's some kind of joint approach that these kinds of collections could go through that might save everybody money. So I want to characterize that, at least include that concept.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, we are exploring other ways. We are also having an e-commerce solution for the school system, so we're trying to work through that. Just to give you a little bit of background on county's real estate taxes, it's state code. You can't subsidize the collection of the taxes and have different rates. And that's the reason I believe there is a fee for some of those taxes.
And are you finished, Mr. Stork, or did you have more? Okay. And there was also the issue of the looking for options for elementary schools, more options for fresh fruit and vegetables, and Ms. Quinn said she could outline what those options and opportunities are that they're exploring. And I think we have a couple more, Pat.
Well, I know this is a lot of work, so there's, no close deadline on it, but I think one of the things that I'd like to see come out of this, is go ahead and put it down as a future, a next step, is to develop a plan to eliminate all sodas, including diet sodas, and in a certain amount of time, and figure out the cost.
And mine was a piggyback on that one because it included that, but the concept of using the vending machines as a marketing partnership opportunity to get companies who meet these guidelines or offer the alternatives in both drinks and in the snack alternatives to have product placement in the school. And so, that gets us not only making money, but eliminating and swapping not so great choices with better choices.
Okay.
And then the other one I had, Ms. Evans, was I'm not understanding why, and maybe I didn't hear it or there wasn't a response, but there's the call for community outreach specialists. I don't understand why this doesn't fall under DCCO.
And Ms. McLaughlin raised that as well. I don't know how we can make that a next step unless it would be consider alternative staffing. Is that what you're asking? And I guess we need to.
Okay, let me.
But we need to discuss it if we're going to.
With regard to, if you go back to the Prismatic report, they do recommend quite a number of different staff added. We did not, add all those positions. I do think that we could use some assistance around how do we better communicate our product to our students. How do we design, how we message that in our schools, for an example. How do we communicate to the broader public about those things? And that's a full-time job for someone. And we could, certainly look to our communications department for that, but we'd have to potentially add a position over there. And I think this takes a special skill set and expertise. So we felt like it would be helpful in terms of increasing meal participation. Hopefully this person could pay for their job if they could help us better educate our community. And so I think that was the rationale. I don't want to speak for you, Susan, but that was my understanding.
That's correct. And currently, in the Prismatic study, I believe it had a total of 7 positions that they thought we should add, and we are not suggesting that we add 7 full positions. But one of the reasons why they thought we should have additional staff was currently our supervisors. It's that span of responsibilities as well as some of these other central responsibilities that Prismatic wanted us to kind of separate a little bit so that the supervisors can focus on the needs of running the schools. And then we would have this particular position that could help us promote the program. And as Dr. Garza mentioned, hopefully it'll pay for itself because we will be increasing participation. The other position is really a training position. We need somebody to do probably more quality control from a central perspective out to our individual schools. And it's to enhance our training programs.
And I see 2 quick go-backs, hopefully quick, Ms. McLaughlin and Ms. Hines and Mrs. Strauss.
Right. What I guess I wanted to say, because I appreciate what Dr. Garza was saying and Ms. Quinn was saying, I do think everything that we understood from Prismatic, having a new training specialist, I could get behind because this is part of what the findings were. We needed better training. But I will push back a little bit on the community outreach specialist only because I don't think that's a long-term position. I mean, we're looking at hiring someone with, again, salary and benefits, but ideally, once we get this done within a year's time, I don't know that this is a position that we would need long-term in our system. Once we communicate to the public that we have now taken these positive steps to improve our food, and here's the timeline, beyond a year, I just think it's a matter of...
If I could add one more
Yeah.
thing, I'm sorry. It's also to update our information on the website, because currently we're having one of the supervisors do a lot of the communication piece of the food services program. So we're trying to enhance the information we're providing to the parents and students through the website. So, we could evaluate it after a couple of years after we have some of these in place, but it really is ongoing in that we're trying to have the communications ongoing from year to year and consistent communication because we have
I hear what you're saying.
Okay, Ms.
coming into
McLaughlin,
the-
can I ask you, since I'm sorry, now I'm starting to
No, I guess
get upset because we're way behind, and
Yeah.
I will just ask you, are you recommending a particular action?
Yes, I was
Okay.
recommending for next step that, again, this is the superintendent's call. She does the operations. But in terms of us giving guidance, my next step request was, even if we allocated for Ms. Hunter's shop, which is called community outreach, to hire another person where this might be part of their job responsibilities, why warehouse this person in food and nutritional services when maybe we only need that person doing 75% work on food and
Okay,
nutritional
we have
services?
several other people who want to weigh in on this. Ms. Hines, Ms. Strauss, and Ms. Smith.
Yeah, I think we are kind of getting into the weeds. And
We are, yeah.
my only point would be if it makes sense to staff to have it in FNS because it's in-house, it will save money to FNS, it's an ongoing need, then I'm willing to support it. I can tell you from working with the advocates in the community, they do feel like there's a communication gap. And so I think it's a needed position. And if staff folks feel like FNS is the place to have it, I think we should just leave it there.
Okay, Ms. Strauss, quickly.
I agree with Ms. Hines.
Ms. Smith? Okay. Is there a consensus to do that? To leave it up to the superintendent as to where this position will be housed? Consensus? Yes? Do I see hand nods? All right, raise your hands if that's the consensus. All right, that's the consensus. Thank you very much, and I want to thank all of the Food and Nutrition Service employees who came out, and of course our Real Food for Kids Chair, Joanne Hammermaster and Mary Porter. Thank you so much for everyone coming out, and of course our wonderful food and nutrition staff and Susan Quinn. Thank you so much. We'll take a...
Yeah.
And do you want to do next steps in budget
Okay.
now or take
Next
a break?
steps for the budget. Next steps for the budget.
Right now.
Right now.
And by the way, I was taking also copious notes, so I know I missed some on this. So
Yes, I
I think
have some
Ted,
notes, too. We'll
Ted and
compare.
Patty can help me demonstrate how the percentages for the county would change if FCPS were fully funded under two conditions, using only existing revenue and with an increase of the tax rate by 2 cents. And this was Mr. Moon's question, so if that helps determine whether or not I got it right, if you'll recall
Yes,
that.
that's correct.
Okay. Analyze the percentage of overall county budget for benefits compared to our budget to add to the page 13 analysis.
Thank you.
Okay? And then add the benchmark document to the resources document. And I apologize that I had a bunch of notes here, but that's the end of my next steps. I probably dropped the ball.
I think you got it. You had, one was to add the total staffing to the staffing change as a result of the comparison, the
Number of
staff
employees?
decrease. Yeah.
Is that what
number
you're
of
saying?
employees,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, total number of our employees. That's right. I remember that one.
I think there was mention of developing a USA Today-like summary of the summary points. The summary of summaries, you know, those.
Yes.
Right?
Say it again.
It's to that one slide that had the comparison of schools, elementary schools. You had the staffing impact that the increased student ratio was going to cause to. It was like say it was going to cost 4.4 teachers or 4.2 staff people. You did the whole analysis. Yeah, I know. That's, as long as you captured it, I'm good. I just want to be sure that that was captured. To each school template that you had, I guess. Or I guess those are actual schools, but. Yes. Yes, the total, yes. So we got it. We're good. I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, go ahead.
The next step I'd asked for, again, was trying to provide context so our Board of Supervisors understand how we come up with 5.7 or 8%. So the request was that we provide the annual percentage increase of the other WABE schools, budgets over time. So I'm trying to think how you put that. But basically, each year, their budgets will increase by a certain percentage. Their operating budget increases a certain percentage each year. And if we put into context what our request has been, then suddenly we don't.
Budget increase or the transfer request increase? Remember, those are two different numbers.
No, I
Budget-
understand. So you could, I think that, I'm worried that that's going to be really difficult for you guys to go find out from each of those WABE schools what's the percentage increase that they get from their. It's really more about what's the increased cost. I mean, I know we're saying our budget's going up 2.4%.
So I think we could compare the cost per pupil for those jurisdictions. We have that information readily available in the WABE guide. Well, we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. What I'm trying to do is the visual of if you see that over time our cost goes up 1%, 1%, 1%, 1.5%, and then it turns out all the other schools' cost per pupil is going up 3%, 3%, 3%. It's not just the cost per pupil, but it's that percentage of when they think we
Absolutely.
keep increasing.
We'll show
Does
you
that
the
make
dollar
sense?
value and the percentage.
The percentage, I think, is
Yep.
what
Yep.
I want to hold on to and show them.
Okay, I think I noted, I think this point was raised by Mrs. Reed about somewhere documenting the amount of funding that FCPS spends outside of K through 12 education to correspond with similar data that the county provided us, about how they support what we
Yeah,
do.
at least making that point. If the data aren't readily available or if it were too difficult to pull that together, my point was just that we at least raise that as an issue, that we have comparable type costs that are embedded.
And I had one other on my list, and that was, I'll let Dr. Garza finish. Okay, just that we're counting on you to provide a balanced and nuanced message when you speak to the supervisors, reflecting all that you heard here today.
I don't want her to get up and say.
Yeah.
No, I'll be diplomatic and tactful, but firm.
And Dr. Garza, the last one was I don't know what we're calling it, the summary. Budgeting for dummies is not a good phrase, but the USA Today kind of one-page summary, the high level that addresses all the fundamentals that we've talked about, our transfer request, the alluding to the state giving us some revenue at some point in the future if they ever pass a budget, and the trade-offs and kind of the trickle down, what the impacts could be.
Yeah, if I could translate
Yeah.
that, if we were to go through this document and look at the box at the top of each one, and if we could distill each box, let's say, into one point, and then have all of those points on one page, I think that's kind of where.
Can I
Mrs.
just ask the
Reed is
chair and
going.
vice chair to meet with the
Yes.
superintendent?
Yes.
Because you
We could
guys,
do that.
Well,
that's what,
we got it.
and obviously Susan.
And we could look at the one page, key points and just see if that's also helpful with some updating maybe.
All right, thank you, everyone. A brief recess here, Mr. Moon, till what,
5
4:30?
minutes,
Until 4:30.
4:30, and then we'll start with the Infrastructure Finance Committee discussion that was due to start at 3 p.m.